Doing bass for the record was a pretty straightforward affair with an equally straightforward objective. The idea basically was to have this extremely aggressive, metallic, monolithically clangy presence of bass on this record. And that's pretty much exactly what I got. Now, there is a little bit of fretless bass that appears at the very end of the last song of the record, so a lot of what I'm saying here is not going to apply, but we're going to go into it anyway. So the signal path for bass on this record starts with an original Japan-built Ibanez BTB bass, which is a 35-inch scale 5-string that has an 18-volt active system in it. And then the pick that I used when there is picking is a really bizarre one that Pickboy makes called a home bass. And the ones that I use are 1.2 millimeters thick. And then the strings on the bass for this were very thick, and they were thick enough that they needed a tapered core on the area of the string that passes over the bridge saddle. And this is pretty much the only way to fly when you want to do bass that's that heavy and you still need sustain, like a normal instrument. And that's pretty much it. It went into the Motu, which is an 896 HD Mark III hybrid, I think is the whole name of that. And the fretless bass that you do hear on the record is my custom-made Steve Sukop 5-string fretless, which is an incredible instrument that I've had for well more than half my life at this point, which I'll never get rid of. So now I'm going to go into the signal path, at least for the fretted bass on the record, since that's most of what you hear. So unlike pretty much all of the other sounds on the record, I got the bass sound during the final mix in Pro Tools. And the reason I did that actually had nothing to do with not wanting to commit to sounds, but it had to do with the fact that there were techniques and also plugins that I wanted to use for this, which I couldn't use until I got to Pro Tools. What I did basically is the bass track feeds two aux inputs in the Pro Tools mixer. The first of these is set up as a sub bass, and the sub bass removes everything except the lowest low end of the bass, just leaving that sort of rumbly, subwoofer kind of low end. And then the second one of the auxes is all of the dirt and the high end and the clang and the distortion. So combined together, this forms the bass sound that you heard before I started rambling about bass on the record. And so what you're seeing on the screen right now is the sub bass sound, how that was achieved. And if we go clockwise from the left, you'll see that there's an EQ set up with a low pass filter cutting out pretty much everything except the lowest low end, which then goes to the Waves C6, which is a multiband compressor, and that's sort of pushing the sub into place and not really affecting any of the top because there's no top information, it's all filtered out. This sound then moves to the Maxim limiter, which I only use for things like this, and this is just steamrolling the crap out of the bass to the point where it's like a sine wave and it just doesn't move, which is pretty much essential for doing the sub bass part of this. And then if for some reason there's any peaks or any information dynamically that isn't being flattened by that, there's this Sony Oxford compressor right after it, which is flattening whatever is left. And that's the sub bass part of it, and this is what it sounds like by itself. So as I had previously mentioned, the bass hits two aux inputs in the Pro Tools mixer. The first of those we just saw and heard is the sub bass, and the second one, which we're looking at now, is the dirt and the grind and the clang and the distortion and all of that stuff. So what we're looking at processing-wise, from the left moving clockwise, starts at the SansAmp PSA1. This is a plug-in version of the PSA1 rack preamp. It sounds pretty much the same, and it's kind of the de facto for anybody that really likes to work with dirty bass sounds, and it's great. I use it on almost every mix that I do that's either a rock or a metal mix, and for good reason. So this moves over to the EQ, and you'll notice on the EQ that there's some pretty heavy cuts and some boosts and some really heavy high and low pass filtering. Now most of this isn't actually for the tone of the bass, but it's to make the bass fit in the mix and also to make the dirt fit with the sub bass. But you'll see that there are a couple of boosts which are in the upper harmonics to sort of enhance the clang and the stringiness of the bass. And then if we move over to the next plugin, it's just a trim, and the only thing it's doing is just flipping the phase on this track. And I experimented back and forth with flipping the phase to see which sounded better when combined with the sub bass, and I ended up going with flipping the phase instead of leaving it alone. And then after that, as you'll see at the bottom, is the Sony Oxford compressor, set pretty similarly to how it was set for the sub, but you know, there's a lot less compression needed to sort of steamroll this sound because it has a good amount of distortion on it, which kind of handles most of that to begin with. So now we're going to listen to what just the dirt track sounds like. And now here's both again.